A lot of people I know in data, and certainly for me, the reason I love data and I'm happy to be a data person is because it's all about solving problems, and it's basically that it's the fabric of a business. It's a fabric of anything now. Everything's digitalized, so it gives you this amazing material that you can use to solve problems. So I really, I think at my core, and certainly my team would say within Count that I'm just at my heart, I'm just a problem solver. I love solving problems. I love the art of solving problems. I love ambiguous problems. I love structuring problems. And data is just the best thing to use for that.
Hey nerds, Monica here. Welcome to the Data Podcast for Nerds, where we get to talk to amazing professionals and ask them all about how they're using data to solve the world's problems. We're highlighting all the tips, tricks, and nerdy fun bits to make you the best data professional you can be. Today with us, we have Ollie Hughes, who is going to talk to us about what makes a highly effective data team really stand out above the rest. How are you doing, Ollie?
Hey, Monica, I am very well, thank you. I'm just based outside London. I can hear my children running around downstairs, but hopefully it won't be too loud. I've told them they cannot come in during the studio recording, so they'll be very good, I'm sure. But I can hear them. Yeah, yeah.
Okay. We might have an additional fun bit section for the
Yeah, yeah,
kids, right?
exactly. Exactly. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So typically on our podcast, we start out by understanding people's origin stories. So
Sure.
if you could please tell us about your background and how you got to where you are today in your career.
Yeah, sure. So, like a lot of people that I know who got into data, I sort of fallen into data. It wasn't my plan to be a data person, if that makes sense. I sort of went on a career and just sort of fell into it. I started out, I did mechanical engineering at university. And then my first job was actually working as like an operations improvement person. I would go into a factory and I'd help them work out how to make their factory run twice as fast. It was a very interesting, very technical job, cranking machines to run faster and trying to. There was definitely some analytics involved, but I was very much there to be kind of manufacturing, like lean manufacturing help, basically. I then went to work at Tesco, which is one of Europe's probably biggest retailer still. And there is when I got into data like properly, I think, where I was doing various projects for different parts of the UK business and ended up getting really interested by what's called cost to serve, how to help Tesco understand like the when they sell all their products in the grocery store, they don't actually how do they know what the actual net profit of that product is? And that led me down a whole rabbit warren of databases and analytics and data modeling. And that was when I was like, actually, this data is a great way to solve problems. And that's when I started realizing um, that I was quite keen to be in data, basically. And that's led me a few various ways into starting up a company with my co-founder, another Ollie, and we built Count, which is a new kind of canvas-based BI tool. So I've been doing that for a few years since.
When you transferred from that mechanical engineering into data,
Yeah.
did you find those kind of as like two separate worlds, or did you start seeing kind of the intersection of the two?
Yeah, I think I don't I think data. A lot of people I know in data, and certainly for me, the reason I love data and I'm happy to be a data person is because it's all about solving problems, and it's basically that it's the fabric of a business. It's a fabric of anything now. Everything's digitalized, so it gives you this amazing material that you can use to solve problems. So I really, I think at my core, and certainly my team would say within Count that I'm just at my heart, I'm just a problem solver. I love solving problems. I love the art of solving problems. I love ambiguous problems. I love structuring problems, and data is just the best thing to use for that, right? So I think that's what I am at my core. If I'm honest, is a problem solver, and then data is just the best place to be if you love solving problems, or it should be at least.
Absolutely, absolutely. A lot of people, they think, data analytics or the data space, it's all about like programming and you're in front of your computer and you're just like heads down in the code and all of that. And while that might be true for some, it's really the end goal of solving a problem. And I think I've talked to a lot of guests also that start out in that mechanical engineering space. And I see that transition just being natural.
Yeah, yeah. It's mechanical engineering is obviously is great. It's just it's applied mathematics is what I often say, and obviously there's obviously various elements to it, but it is it's basically applied mathematics and problem solving. And I love the technical problem solving of like how to write a really efficient SQL query. That is definitely part of the itch is scratched technically, and that's why data is so great. Is that you can be a technical problem solver, but most importantly, perhaps you can also be a business problem solver, and obviously that's where the real value and impact can be too. So I love that you can do a bit of both. That's why data is so unique because you're not just doing technical problems or business problems. You're in the middle, and that's why data is so interesting I think, as a discipline, also where its challenges lie as well, right?
Absolutely. So, great segue into my next question. So, you talk about technical problems, business problems. What are your favorite problems to solve?
Well, I good question. Funnily enough, I obviously do a lot of problem solving at work. That's kind of my role now, increasingly at Count, is to sort of wade in where there is a problem to solve in the business. If there's something going well, that's not really for me to get stuck into. It's going well, I can leave it. It's where the biggest problems to solve. So that's at work. That's very much what I'm doing all the time. Is just trying to solve the next problem the business is most blocking the business. Um, but I I was on holiday last week and I found myself enjoying with my two little boys. I mentioned using ChatGPT to generate riddles for us to solve as we went through our various long walks at the beach and seaside. So apparently, I'll just generate problems if I haven't got them in front of me. So
I guess that's one way to do it.
yeah, yeah. Or I also can go down the rabbit hole on Twitter or X. I love the chess problems that come up on there. I find if I'm I find that the little square box in a Twitter feed is perfect for a chessboard. So happy to also solve chess problems in my downtime too.
Absolutely. Do you like the LinkedIn games? Those little puzzles?
I've tried to avoid those if I'm honest. I my wife is definitely into that, along with Wordle and all those other word problems, and I will dip in on her phone if I'm next to her. But otherwise, I try to avoid that they're a bit too intense for me. But so ironically, that is where I draw the line because my wife is
Okay.
so into it.
Good to know. All right. So, obviously, there's different approaches to be able to solve different types of problems.
Mm.
And I think that's where we're going to go ahead and just jump into the fun bits of what you have to share with us with the work that you've been doing at Count.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things which a bit of background for Count, we're trying to we believe that a BI tool should be more than just a place to show numbers, to show dashboards and show metrics and KPIs. It should be a place when it's doing it should be a place that the business can use to see numbers but actually solve business problems. So it's a BI should stand for business improvement in our eyes. So as we built out Count, and it's quite a different looking BI tool to the ones that maybe the audience have been used to. Does all the same things at its core, but it's structured to allow people to collaborate and problem solve in this big infinite canvas as well. And it's very flexible. So we spent a lot of time as we build the product speaking to data teams and saying, look, what makes a great data team? Like, what makes a data team a team who is seen by the business as the business's problem solvers, not just the people who produce the numbers, the people who produce the charts, but actually are known to be almost the critical friend of the business, the hit squad, where the business relies on the data team to actually tackle meaty, difficult problems. And how do you work? So that's what we went and sought is like where these teams are, because not every team every data team sadly is in that position of being like their company's hit squad for problem solving. So we went to speak to them and said, how do you work? Let's understand the principles of how you work and how you operate so we can make a framework around that, because that's how everyone wants to be. Everyone wants to be valuable to the business and not just providing charts. So we work with them. We've worked with over hundreds now of data teams to understand the ways they work and sort of empirically, sadly not necessarily analytically, but empirically, just build up a sense of what really makes the difference between a data practitioner who's really valuable and those who are, and compared to those where maybe they're sort of more just serving the business with insights. And we've come up with this kind of four, we call them four tenets, four principles, four guiding principles, which we believe and we've increasingly seen like makes you a great data person, makes you a very valuable problem solver to the business. Yeah,
Amazing. All right, so we have four different tenets that you're going to walk us through to how to be the most effective you could be when you're on a data team.
exactly. Yeah. So there are four of them, and they kind of there's a trap, which is the yang to the yin, if that makes sense, or yin to the yang. So there's a kind of a negative behavior which we don't want to do, as tempting as it might be, and there's therefore a contrasting good behavior, like the tenant. So the first tenant is a tenant called operational clarity. So let me explain what that means and what it doesn't mean. So when I was back in my early career, when like in, and I don't want to quote the time, but I'm old enough to know there was a period of time which may be hard to believe when like just getting data into the hands of people was a really big deal. Like people had no data, and just getting data out there, seeing numbers was a really big deal. And that was almost the most important part of data teams. Just building a dashboard was like a huge win for the business to see the metrics and see numbers for the first time and get their hands on it. That isn't the case anymore. Now we're flooded with information. There's data everywhere. There's data in every product we use. Even if we're like working in our own day-to-day lives, and we use an app like Zwift for cycling, or whatever smartwatch you have, you get metrics everywhere, numbers all over the place. And that means that the role of a data team, we think, has to change now. It's not just about getting data out there and just flooding the business you're working in with more and more insights and more charts. As fun as that can be, the goal of a data person now is to provide, as I said, operational clarity, to provide clarity amongst all the information soup that's now available. A data practitioner should be like structuring in the information or removing information even to make the business really clear, the organization you're working in as clear as possible. It's we call it, there's a term in engineering, information theory called signal to noise ratio. Like you want the maximum amount of clarity for the least amount of information, and that's the idea of this. It's like, well, rather than having many dashboards which all say subtly different things, but like they're just different flavors of the same thing. How do we have one very clear report which makes everyone understand what's going on and helps the business understand itself? So
Mhm.
that's the idea of operational clarity, and yeah, that's the positive thing you can do, and it's all about all you can imagine about communication. It's about thinking through how can I give the business. Basically, it's about visualizing the business to the business. It's rather than just the numbers. Like, can you make the business clear as you show them metrics rather than just give them metrics and metrics and metrics? Does that make sense?
Yeah. It does. So what skills are really involved for those data teams to provide operational clarity versus just clarity on the data itself?
This is all about like really as a data practitioner yourself, really understanding how the business fits together. If you know how the business works, where if you're in retail, like where your shops are, or how you know goods and services flow between one end to the other, and how different teams work together, you can then display metrics which are you're communicating the structure of the business as you communicate the metrics. It's not contextualless information you're sharing. You can actually narrate the numbers with structure and help the business understand what the story is. That's a really important part of it. If you don't understand the business, then it's unlikely the business does. The data team is
Yeah.
privileged in that you have all the information, usually in one big data warehouse now, which tells you all the different parts of the business in one place. But if you don't understand how these numbers fit together, then no one else does. So if you don't have that clarity of like what makes sense, and then are communicating that clarity to the business, there's no way someone in marketing understands what's going on in product and how those two worlds interrelate. And that's a really important part of the role a data team needs to have, is the clarifiers. The source of truth is often what we talk about, but it's actually more about the source of truth, not just for numbers and data, but for the business and how the business fits together too.
I could see that. Definitely, I've seen also those situations where there's those silos between marketing and another department where they're like, "Oh, I only know what I myself know in my own department." So it's good to have that overall coverage of the operational clarity across the board. So,
Yeah.
yeah, that makes total sense.
Cool. Well, yeah. So that's a kind of really good idea. Another example would be just, you often know people can do process flow mapping, like how does information flow between the business, doing that, and then adding metrics into that journey so you can see the business flow and the numbers is another good way of doing it. It's basically another way of putting it. Someone put it really well recently. Is like the data team needs to be the glue, which not holds the business together in a weird way, the numbers, but it's not just the numbers, it's the fabric the numbers sit in. You got to paint the frame, not just the numbers itself.
True. I like that. All right, what about pillar 2?
Pillar two will, it will sound more familiar to people working in data already. It's the idea of being a problem solving, as we said, like the organization's problem solvers. This is what we all, I said, I got into data for, and it's a thing which we all want to do, is solve problems. But it's very tempting, and a lot of data people can fall into this, which is that they just they are giving the information to someone else in the company to solve a problem. So they're just becoming the answer machine. Someone's got a problem, they're asking for data from the analyst or whoever is involved, and then the analyst is providing information, but it's unclear quite what the problem is that's being solved. The person who's asking information isn't sharing the wider context, and that just makes the data person more of a like a chart machine rather than being a problem solver. The that's the failure that we can see. What the positive idea is being the problem solver, and what that means tangibly is that the data person is not just providing numbers, but they're actually helping the business to structure their own thinking on their own problem. Very, very common that when someone asks them data, they haven't really thought through the problem carefully. They're just asking questions out of their head. Maybe they're in the shower one night, have an idea, and they just ask for some information. It's very unlikely they're doing a rigorous problem solving structure, broken the problem down to sections, really thought through all the elements, particularly if it's a complex problem. And what we want is the data practitioner, the data person, to be structuring the problem for both them and the business, and sharing the problem solving structure, not just the numbers. And that completely elevates an analyst from being a chart person into being a problem solver, because you're saying, hey, you asked for this piece of information. Can you just tell me more about the problem that you're trying to solve is, so I can understand more what's going on? Thank you for that. I've just laid this out as a bit of a structured diagram. I've just been thinking through the different questions we could ask and the different ways to approach this bigger problem. I've given you the data here and I've laid it out this way, but there's a few other ways we could tackle this. Is this helpful? And that
Mhm.
subtle conversation shift um, suddenly takes all the cognitive load, all the thing out of the person's brain and all the mess in their brain. And suddenly you're giving them, again, clarity, helping them think, helping them weigh up, and helping them get to a good decision, where the analyst is basically guiding them through that journey, obviously working with them, not just doing it yourself, but kind of being the prompt, being the critical friend to make sure that it's rigorously thought through. And what we see when this happens, when you make that shift and offer to lean in more and to help with ideas, is that as soon as the business can see that the data person has a really good logical way of thinking through things, which obviously data people do because they love writing code. They have to be relatively logical. They start to rely upon you to be they start giving you higher level goals and questions to ask, and they stop asking for tactical information, and they start relying on you to help them think, not just to give them numbers. And that's the position that is really it's the fun bit of data in my mind. It's the bit when you're really tackling knotty problems, and data's then part of that. But yeah, that's what we mean by problem solving. It's really problem solving, and really not just problem solving in your own space in the technical side of things, or how to present numbers even. It's in like, well, what's actually the best way to tackle this business problem? And can I help them see that? And can I help make this problem feel easy in their head?
Yeah. It seems like the skills that they would have to use a lot in that is with the critical thinking, and also compared to the curiosity of the situation itself and really digging into the why do they need this question that they're asking solved.
Yeah,
So the five whys, if you've ever heard of that,
five
where
whys
you're
are
just asking
great.
why over and over.
Totally. There are loads of great frameworks for problem solving. Five whys is a great one, very natural, a great way for like root cause analysis. There's hypothesis trees, which is sort of taking which gives you a way to sort of structure more ambiguous relationships and seeing if you can break them down. There's loads of problem solving techniques out there. And actually, I find often data people are just very good at this anyway. It just comes naturally to them often as well. But you can definitely learn those frameworks. Critical thinking, as you say, is the fundamental strength that a data person is bringing to this tenant, and it's just making sure that's then seen and valued by the wider business. Because I guess the it's not like it's always there. It's just whether it's being utilized in the conversations as well. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. What's the most unique framework to problem solving itself that you've seen work?
They're not there's lots of them out there. They're not you'd think there'd be a book on it because it's such a powerful thing, but there are books on it, but they're not like there's not one they're not as bestsellers as I think they should be. Um, I have to say, my I'm a big fan, and my team will tell you this, of using trees, of using like a kind of a root cause analysis tree or a decision tree to say, here's the problem we're trying to solve. How can we break this problem down into distinct chunks? You're using a kind of a tree structure to sort of break apart. But it's like mind mapping if you've used that idea before, but it's just like what goes from the top goal down rather than going out as a fan. But that's mind mapping is a good way of putting it. It's a very powerful way of doing it. It's breaking the problem down into smaller chunks that you can go and test and validate. That's a great way of doing it. Just making it just smaller chunks of a problem is the way that is probably the most fundamental idea that I think I lean on loads. Um,
Definitely makes it more manageable for sure.
Totally. Another favorite of mine from back to my manufacturing days is what's called SMED. SMED is a way it's got a very funny name, but what it really stands for is looking at a process that happens, be that like any process could be in a factory, changing the colors in a printer, or it could be changing a tire in Formula One or whatever it is, and looking at each step of the process and working out if you can remove it, if you can move it out the critical path, you can shorten it or get rid of it completely. Like just systematically, just looking at every step of a process and seeing if you can remove the critical path a lot. That's another very fun problem solving technique. You can use it in your daily life as well. You can use it for getting out of bed in the morning, for example, and getting ready for work. So there's many applications of these frameworks.
Love it. All
Yeah.
right. What about pillar number three?
Number three is is about minimizing the time to a decision. So this is again in many ways, we often as data people think my goal is to get the numbers, the insight into the hands of the company, and obviously that is often what the company expects. But the best data practitioners are thinking beyond just the numbers. They're thinking about the process of making a decision and the steps that the wider the wider process that the numbers they're producing are feeding into, and is that actually working? Is the data I'm providing and using being used in the right context, in the right way, displayed with the right people in the right timeframes to speed up the decision making process as a whole, not just providing the numbers. Because what really matters is for a business to be competitive, is isn't just getting data; it's the fact that they're making great decisions quickly. Like the
Mhm.
speed of high quality decision making is the engine room of a business's growth. Ultimately, in terms of like the way to improve itself. So the best data teams and practitioners are thinking about that, not just can I provide accurate data, as important as that is. They're thinking about, is this data being sent to the right people at the right time, particularly if it's a regular process. So, for example, to make it sort of more tangible, one of the things that we've seen from one of our customers actually at Count is the data team recognize that one of the most important decision making forums in the company, which has the biggest impact at the performance, is the board meeting, the quarterly board meeting or monthly board meeting. And they were involved with building the board pre-read, getting all the numbers ready for the board to review. And they were realizing that if they just provide the pre-read and they read it the day before and go into the meeting, they can't make any decisions because they haven't seen the numbers for very long and they'd have questions, they don't understand it. So the way to make that decision making process better was just to send the pre-read out a week before and ask the questions before the meeting. The data team then can turn around more insights so that the board meeting they are making very quick decisions, and that meant the whole business was moving much faster because it was
Mhm.
making the whole process of making a decision, 1 week rather than two, because their board wouldn't leave with loads of questions unanswered. So that's just a good example of like the data team can think wider into what are the businesses doing with the numbers and how can they help that? Can they suggest a change in order of when data is seen or who is seeing it, or is this actually being used? Have we got all the information we need to make a decision, not just the numbers? So that does that make sense? That's kind of a growing of the role of a data team to think about the decision, not just the insight.
Absolutely. And I'm thinking a lot of it sounds to me like preparation time that is required by all parties involved. So, what approach do you take to make sure that everyone actually is included in that preparation time and responds to that? Like you mentioned with the board of directors giving those answers before the meeting.
Yeah, it's I've seen it done a few ways. Often people recognize that this data isn't really we're not really getting what we need to get. We're not really getting what we need for the decision to happen. And so what I've seen done a few times is people will just like literally draw out the decision making process and say, "Look, you asked for this. I gave you this. Nothing happened. You had a conversation a week later. You asked for more information then, and then a decision was made. Like look how much time we lost in this process because we didn't have the right information at the right time. Can we start can we work a different way at the beginning so we can work this we can shorten this time frame a lot." And so that's this again, process flow mapping is a powerful tool there to like help just communicate very clearly all the wasted inefficiency. There are other parts to this, which is an important insight. Is another thing which data people can think about is different types of decision. So we've talked about the board meeting decision, which is very strategic, happens every quarter or whatever. It's got big meaty decisions happening, at a relatively infrequent time period. The other end of the spectrum is there could be people making decisions every minute or every hour, and it's very instinctive. And then the question is, well, how do we make this decision faster? Maybe it's automation. Maybe we should bring in AI in here and actually get. It's so programmatic what's happening. We can remove the human element completely. That's another end of improving decision time because you just remove, you're removing removing inefficiency in that way. Another part of it could be saying, look, actually, if I give you this pivot table environment, can you answer more questions yourself for that particular? So it's about really thinking through the different types of decisions that are happening, both operational to strategic and things in between, and working out what's the best process or data product to provide at those points. But it's not just the numbers, it's the whole process too.
Yeah. So then what skills are involved when you're trying to think of all of those different scenarios of the decision-making process? Is it kind of like thinking outside the box or what else is involved there?
Yeah, I think it requires a bit of operational thinking and thinking beyond like where is this data going. I think it does help that you know the business, you know the business, how the business operates, and the regular feedback loops or meetings that are happening and what data they're using. Is that working? I think that's really helpful. So again, learning the business is a really important attribute of that. So you can then work out the interventions that make most sense. A really powerful way of doing this is actually just to take an audit. Like, what is the data team? What are you being asked to deliver? What are you being asked for as a data person? Like, are you being asked for the same thing again and again and again? Like every week, you regularly get asked to build this report, and then it makes you go, "Hang on, I'm doing this work. Repeat. It's a very repeatable, very formulaic thing I'm doing here. How can I do this faster? What can we do differently? This is a waste of maybe my time and your time. We could do it a different way. What can I give you to do it yourself?" And so it's the kind of self reflection piece can also be a good way of starting it. Is thinking through where your time is going as an individual and saying, "There's maybe a faster way of doing this."
Yeah, I can see that. That makes a lot of sense.
We're almost there.
All
Number
right,
4.
number 4.
Number 4 is, the idea of measuring yourself. It's it comes back to that discussion we had earlier about how data people sit in this problem solving space of technical problem solving and business problem solving. And that's both a joy, a blessing, and a curse, we said, if you recall. The real challenge for data people is not to get too entranced by the technical problem solving, because unless that's really clearly going to deliver business value, like the most valuable thing of a data person is their time, where their time is going, and how much that time is used to drive genuine business value. That's you want to be undeniably driving performance of the business and helping business grow or save money or whatever it is. And that's where your focus has to be. And you want to spend as much of your time as you possibly on those problems. And therefore, you what you don't want to be doing is optimizing things that don't actually clearly drive that value. Now, clearly, that means you need to be great at your technical. You need to learn your skills and be technically great, so you can move quickly. You've got no technical limitations to your ability to answer these problems. But doing that without having a clear goal for it, that's tricky, because then you're doing things which only you really benefit from, and the business doesn't. And
Mm.
that's the idea of measuring yourself, is saying, how much of my time am I spending on actually genuine business problems, and how much of my time am I spending, not really moving the business forward much, maybe making life a bit easier, but am I really being careful with my time allocation? That's a key principle there as well. Is just um, yeah, just constantly thinking back to how am I helping the business grow? And it's kind of a obvious thing to say, but it's amazing how many times I've seen people not do that, actually, and sort of go down the kind of the technical rabbit hole and just get entranced by learning new skills, where the line back to that being useful is it can get increasingly minimal. Yeah.
Mhm. What are your tips in how to measure the right things?
Well, yeah. I'm not saying it's easy, this, by the way. I'm just saying this is an important principle, important check. In fact, with all these four tenets, as you may have seen, they're all guiding lights. They're kind of that no one who's really doing this is saying they've done it well. It's a continual journey of ever getting better and better. And so, I want to make that clear. It's not like a tick list. It's a guiding light. It's a north star to keep following and keep checking yourself and saying, am I really helping the business be clear about what's going on? Am I helping them problem solve? Am I making decisions faster, helping business make decisions faster? And am I working on the right things? Those are the ideas. Those are the kind of four questions to keep asking yourself as you're working. Um, yeah. So how do you measure that you're working on the right things? I think it's a good question. There's also various ways to answer that question. I think a great one is just asking the people you're working with in the business, like, what are you really struggling with? What are the problems that the business is trying to solve? And make sure that you're entrenched in those problems. Like, you're really thinking about what are ways we could tackle that problem with the data I've got? Are there new ways we haven't thought about this problem? What can I go and investigate? What we don't want is for data people to be spent most of their time spent just maintaining the reporting suite of the business. We don't want people spending loads of time like just making sure the data, the dashboards of the business are running well. We want that to be true, we want it to be happening, but it needs to be a smaller portion of your time, so you can spend more time doing the fun stuff, doing the problem solving, and helping the business grow, and thinking of fresh, new, novel ways that the business hasn't seen before, and helping them find opportunities they hadn't seen. And that's the valuable stuff. That's the fun stuff, and that's the stuff which you have to go ask often what that looks like. So you're not just reacting to what the business thinks it needs.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I love how this is considered to be a framework because with these four pillars, it really seems like they are very interactive and rely on each other in order
Yeah.
to make you be a highly effective data team.
Yeah, exactly. There's a lot of um, they work in different levels, but one of the things I love is if you um, if you are delivering operational clarity, it's very once you've got that kind of clarity, like, whoa, that's weird. I didn't know that. What's going on over here? That seems very strange. Instantly, you're in a problem solving mode. So there's a wonderful virtuous cycle between getting operational clarity and then the data team being able to the whole business going, that is strange. And the data team are then naturally the people to go and solve those problems. So that there's a really nice kind of if you get operational clarity, you start becoming the problem solvers by default. So they work really nicely together. And then as you discover more, as you dive into those problems, you then can clarify better what the business looks like. There's a really nice virtuous cycle there. And similarly, when it comes to what we were discussing earlier, making a decision and measuring yourself, as I said, one of the ways to know that you could improve the decision making speed, is to see your measure what you're doing as a data person, saying, what, why am I doing this? There's a lot of backwards and forwards here. It's a lot of my time being wasted and their time being wasted. There's probably a better way of doing it. So reflecting on what you're spending your time on, and sort of looking for opportunities to grow, and auditing who is asking for what question can help you make better decisions. So, for example, if you're finding yourself being this one person keeps asking for more and more information, what can I give them? What can I give them as a data product which gives them that answer without asking me? That's helping both of you, and it's solving both tenants at once. So they come in nice pairs in many ways, um, and they're all driving towards clarity. They're all driving towards value add activities to the business, and not just like maintaining status quo. That's what they're all kind of leading towards. Yeah.
Yes. Yes, I love this. So, what are your next plans for this framework or these tenants?
Good question. I think what I've been loving so far, we've sort of got to like version one of these. I think there's a lot. What I'm really trying to gather right now is like examples of how people are doing this, because there are many. What these tenants, I think, what we've learned as a community is that these tenants are widely applicable to anyone doing analytics. It's like serving the company with BI and analytics. They make sense. No one's really said, "Oh, you're missing a tenant here," or something's missing here. They're high level, but they are generically useful. But how you execute on these tenants really depends on your context, where you are, what the next step you can take. So we're trying to gather more examples of how people are doing this. There are many ways to give operational clarity. One could be as simple as just deleting all the old dashboards no one's looking at, which are confusing, is one way to level up in a small way in operational clarity. Another way is to write a really great, clear report every week that the business like relies on to just give them the story that they're all following a common narrative. There's many ways to do it. um, so we're trying to collect all these examples. That's what I want to do next, is sort of build a kind of not necessarily like the full picture, but like just loads of tangible, practical things that you can go away, and people can take away and think about more and apply in their own context, be that the right industry or the right data maturity level, or company size. And we've actually got our own podcast called More Than Numbers, which we're running at Count. It's count.co/MTN. You can see episodes where we're talking to data leaders as they're talking through how they've helped their team make a movement in one of these different tenant directions, and like making it a really tangible case study. So that's definitely where we're at, the phase we're at right now, just getting feedback, hearing from people. I love hearing people telling me, we've just done a team away day, and I've gone away and we've done a whole strategy day around these tenants, or I've just got a new job because I talked about the tenants and I said this is what data teams should be doing. And so that's obviously very wonderful to hear that people are really using it and it's being practical and changing strategies and changing careers. And I just love hearing those stories right now. And we're trying to build a bit of a corpus of examples that people can come to and just dig out the ones that make most sense for them.
I think that would be very valuable for kind of like a lessons learned type thing to give to others so that they can see those different use cases and examples to then kind of spark their own ideas on how they can use those frameworks and tenets as well.
Exactly. Yes, we want this to be a kind of community owned thing. One of the instigators for doing this was that we also recognize that, unlike if you're a marketer or you're in sales, or you kind of people sort of know what you're there to do. And in data, people have very different opinions of what data teams are for, in both as data people and also what the business thinks. I've heard CEOs say as many different things about what a data team's purpose is. So part of this is also just saying, like, this is what we think a data team's for, and therefore it can be a kind of it can be a part of us as an industry defining ourselves and our purpose as well, which is cool.
Yes, very. So, obviously, when new teams or structured teams are learning these new frameworks, ways of working, it's a learning journey. So, a question that I ask all of my guests, which applies very well right now, is how you approach learning, or how you think that others should be approaching learning these new frameworks and tenets.
Yeah, good question. That's a great question. I I I don't think there's one way of learning the tenants. I think what we've learned is people. Yeah, I think seeing by example is really helpful. Like, I think we talk a lot about like operational clarity, metric trees, metric maps are a really great execution of operational clarity. But until you see what that is as like an artifact, it's very hard to imagine it. So you can see them. We have them on our website on count.co. You can go look at them. So that's one thing. Like seeing examples, understanding it more is a great way to learn. I think these ideas. I think the ideas kind of make sense, and I still think they can be useful even just hearing them and like a bit of could have like clarity of what I'm doing. But I think to make it tangible, you got to really see people play it out and hear examples of it, how it gets worked. So that's what we have right now. There's also we do have an ebook for those who like to read and learn through reading. We do have like a mini ebook which I can make sure I give to you in your show notes if you have them, so people can go read the blurb on it and get a bit more into the detail. For me, I'm incredibly. You may have gathered from what I've said earlier about how I love using trees for problem solving and mind maps. I'm an incredibly spatial learner. I use visuals all the time to learn and to think through problems and write things down. So I love diagrams. I love all that kind of thing. That's how I learn. Um, Thankfully, this framework is available for all learning types, rather than just my own.
That's great. And you mentioned something about community. So you have that podcast, you have the website. Is there any other community involvement that others can get into?
Yes. So yeah, we if you come to said count.co/mtn, you can see there various like interviews around the tenants, how people have sort of used it to solve like business value. You can also there's a community there of people you can get involved with to ask questions. You can also find more documentation around the frameworks, which we can share as well, like as an ebook, and which is really helpful. You can just, I mean, we're thinking about this a lot, so we love asking having people's questions to us as well, too. So just come to our website count.co, and you'll see loads of different resources around all this kind of stuff, and the community is there as well.
Amazing. Do you have any final recommendations for folks out there that want to become more involved?
Yes, come join and get into our community. We do various webinars, we do various events. We have our More Than Numbers podcast, as I mentioned as well, which is a great place to learn. I think we've seen people start to, if you're already working in a company, I think take the ebook and have a kind of meeting with your wider team and think through these ideas. It's just a good way to spark ideas. We're not trying to make this like uh, we want us to be a distributed idea that everyone can get involved with and come up with ideas. So no idea is a bad idea in this kind of scenario, I think. Yeah, and then we are as a business account, we're going to try and do more and more of a roadshow over the course of the next year or so, going to different cities and stuff, and we'll let people know about that when it's coming out to do more workshops on this kind of thing.
That will be fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Ollie, for coming on and sharing all of this information with us. If anybody has any questions, where can they find and or follow you?
Yeah, they can find me. I'm most around on LinkedIn actually, so you can find me. I'm Oliver Hughes on LinkedIn. I think I'm Hughes Oliver is my handle on LinkedIn. You can dig me out there. Love to chat. DM me if you want to know more. That's where I do post loads of ideas and loads of stories of what I've heard from people who've like done some of this stuff. So that's a great place to follow me, and you can learn more there as well. I'm on Twitter, but not so much anymore. Looks like unless I'm playing for chess puzzles, as I discussed earlier. And yeah, also count.co, you can also get hold of me there as well. Just get stuck into the chat there.
Amazing. Well, thank you again. And as always, folks, happy learning.
You're welcome. Thanks so much.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Data Podcast for Nerds. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. Also, if you want to transition your career and become a data professional, follow me on LinkedIn for even more tips, tricks, and nerdy fun bits.